In this Rhino Grasshopper tutorial, I want to show you how you can make this wavy pattern on a freeform surface. First, I will model the surface in Rhino and then use a technique which I will explain, and you can produce these wavy curves on the surface. And as you can see, we can change the number of these patterns and morph it on a surface. So let's get started from scratch. What I want to do is to make a surface and then import that into Rhino. So we can just simply use an arc. I'm going to use an arc here in the 0 and use the shift key to snap it on the Y and have it like this. Let's make a mirror. So we'll have something like this and we can move it. We can also make it smaller or bigger based on our project. The next thing what I want to do is to, let me just make a mirror for this. Okay, what I want to do is to also draw an arc and use the sweep command to produce the surface. You can also produce the surface as you want. So I'm going to use this arc, the start point, the start, the end, and let's use the control key and bring it a little bit up. And here we have the base curves. You can also use this record history to use the sweep command, select the rail, select the curves, and we will have a surface like this. You can use this curve, make it a little bit bigger. So let's just make this a little bit bigger and produce a surface like this. So because the record history is on, you can just change the surface. And what we want to do is rebuild this. And 30 or 30, that's fine. And it says that the history is broken. Say fine. We have this base surface, and you have to have a NURB surface in the UV direction to produce that wavy pattern. So let's just get started and bring that into Grasshopper. I'm going to put the bifocals plugin so you can see what I'm doing. And in the params menu, I'm going to use the surface, set this to the surface and turn this off. Now we have this base surface. Okay. The next part is we want to make the wave pattern on the ground. This is one of the techniques you can use. So I'm going to move this here. And we have also talked about this in the Voronoi on surface tutorial. I will put it up here if you want to watch it. We have used this technique to put Voronoi on surface if you want to know about Voronoi patterns. So let's get started by going to the surface or just typing dimension, DIM, the dimension command. And what it does is going to find the U and the V dimension approximately. So if the U is through 200, it's going to be 100 for the V. It's just basically giving you a UV dimension, especially to make a plane surface. So I'm going to go to the surface and use the primitive plane surface. Give it to the X and Y and make a base surface based on this one. Okay. So what I want to do is to, first of all, divide this surface into strips, and then we will have use the dispatch, okay, to have these strips in one group and these strips in another group, and then we can just make the sine curve. So you can just learn it. We also have a tutorial about sine, producing the sine curve. I will put it up here if you want to watch it. So let's get started. We can use the Isotrim, and you can find it in the surface utility Isotrim, and divide the surface into strips. So I'm going to type divide domain 2. The Isotrim with combined with divide domain 2 can produce a surface with a division. That's really easy. What it does, it's dividing this surface based on the domain. So you can see that this is the domain. Okay, 0 to 200, something like this, and 0 to 130. And what it does, it divides it into the U division and the V division. So we can just give this a 1 to maybe U count, turn this off, and give this even number. So I'm going to start from 4 to 16 and double click and use the even number. Okay, so we'll have even parts. Okay. So what we want to do is to first have the first set of strips, you can use the dispatch command, and we have a complete tutorial about dispatch. We also have a complete section about logics and dispatch in our course. So if you want to watch the dispatch tutorial, I will put it up here, and you can easily watch it. It has the basics if you don't know what dispatch means, but I'm going to explain it a little bit. So what we want to do is to dispatch this surface into two groups. That's true and false. And you can see the pattern is by default the true false. That means this is true, this is false, this is true, this is false, and that is the technique you can use to put these surface into two set of groups. Okay, now what I want to do is to work with this kind of strips. I'm going to go to the surface and use the deconstruct brep to divide this surface into edges and pick up this edge and this edge to make those points. Again, we can go and type divide, and what we want to do is to pick two edges. So I'm going to go to the sets and use the list item to pick up the edges. This is the first edge, the second edge is basically here, the third edge, and the most important thing about these edges is, let me just bake that and show you in Rhino, is the direction. You can see that this is in this direction and this one is in this direction. So we have to make this one the same direction in Grasshopper. That's really easy. We can just type flip curve and flip one of these, 1 and 0 and 2 if you want to make this the same direction. Okay, we want to divide these two edges into an even number again. We can go to 20, double click this and put it in an even number and give it to the count. Okay, we have to increase that. And now what we have to do is to make something like this, right? This is really easy. Let me just draw it again. You can see that we are skipping each point in one of those edges, and that's really easy. Again, we have to use the dispatch. So we have to use this dispatch thing and dispatch the points, and now we have to work with it. Let me just show you by going to the curve and using a polyline so you can see it. The most important thing is to pick up those points like this point, then this point, then this point, right? We have to pick between two groups. The command you can use and we can use for that is a weave command, and you can pick between different streams. So you can see that I have picked two streams, the list A and list B. That means that if this is true, this is false, this is true, and this is false, then we will go for the next one, and this will be true, this will be false, and we want these points, right? The true for the up edge and the false for the down edge. So when we weave that, let me just connect that. You can see that this is simply connecting this to a polyline, but we need to go to this spline tab and use this interpolate tool. This is a really great tool. You can give this vertices to it, and the tangent at the start and the end is really important, and you can see it's in the X direction. So I'm going to give this an X to the start and the end. You can see it's in this direction, so we have to make it -X. So I'm going to go to the unit expression and put it like -X. That's the way you can make a smooth NURBS curve from these edges. Okay, so that's really easy. What we want to do is to also do that for the list B, which is these strips. So I'm going to just copy this, Control C, Control V, and give it to the next set of strips. Let's just turn this off. The next thing is that we have to have the same division. So I'm going to give this 8 to both of this division. Remember, we have to fix that, right? And now what we have to do is to play with this list B and list A. Now, because we have it from this edge coming to this edge, now we have to come from this edge to this edge. So we have to pick from here list A and list B, right? So I'm going to just choose that, and you can see how easy it is to make these NURBS. curve, and we can simply just increase the division, increase the number here, and produce that pattern. So that was the technique we wanted to use to produce those patterns. We can extrude that to make it a little bit of a surface thing. I'm going to use the shift key, add it here, and go with the Z direction. So let's just give this extrusion. And what I want to do is to put this onto the base surface. So we have used this technique before. I'm going to go to the transform section, morph, and use this surface morph tool to put those solids and curves or surfaces onto the base surface. So I'm going to use this one. Okay. The geometry we want to morph is all of these surfaces, and let's just flatten them so they are all in one group. Okay, we don't want them to be into strips of groups, so we just flatten that. Again, if you don't know about flatten, I will put up the tutorial which you can watch and learn about flatten, graft, and simplifying those things which you have in the right click menu. Okay, the next step is to give it a reference box. So I'm going to go to the surface and use this bounding box to find the bounding box of this. Right click the union because we want a complete box for this. Give it to the reference. The surface is to put it like this. And remember, we have talked about this in the Voronoi tutorial. You can watch those if you want to. But because we have the UVW, we have to right-click and reparameterize. You can also watch the flatten tutorial. We have talked about reparameterizing those things. So remember, when we reparameterize the surface, it's going to be like 0 to 1 and 0 to 1, right? So we can say the UV is completely 0 to 1. We can simply give it a 1. That means we want the complete 0 to 1 of the U and V domain. The W here is exactly the number we have extruded at, so I'm going to give this to the W, and you can see that it's going to put it on the surface. Okay, if you want it to be inside the surface, you can simply just use the negative command and give a negative to this number and then give it to the W. So it's going to go inside that surface. Remember, you can always use that negative to make it minus 6.3. Okay, so that is the way you can make those wavy patterns in Rhino Grasshopper. You can increase the numbers here, and then you can simply just bake it. And let's just make this on the Rhino Grasshopper. That is really beautiful. You can see how easy it is to put those strips onto the surface, and this is the way we can do it. It's the fastest way. It's not the best way. Maybe we want to fabricate this, so it's going to be more complicated, but for a visualization of these patterns, this is an ideal way to produce those patterns, and you can put it on the surface. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and what do you think about this tutorial? How did you think about making that wavy pattern if you wanted to start from scratch? Let me know in the comment section, and see you next time.